Greetings and welcome to another episode of Pep Talks Uncut. Today, our guest is Matt Haslam of Matt Haslam Productions. He's also the lead creator and star of Powered by Rainbows. And good afternoon to you, Matt.
Good afternoon. How's it going?
Fairly good, thank you. Your resume is much more extensive than I touched on. Powered by Rainbows has really bloomed into a massive show. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so basically, Power by Rainbows is a TV show of our company, MHP TV. It is all about LGBTQ education and bringing that education to students worldwide, no matter their age or their gender or their sexual orientation. And we bring it to schools around the world with GSA clubs that we've helped start. And we have over 350 some episodes now, and we just keep continuing to create.
That is fantastic. So what was the inspiration for the show?
Well, actually, a couple years ago, not too distant of a time ago, I came out and I went to my first ever Pride event in Washington, D.C. And at the Pride event, I saw a whole bunch of young people there, and with their parents with all these T-shirts saying like "I'm proud of my gay son" or whatnot. And I sort of decided on the 4-hour ride home from that Pride event that there needed to be some sort of education that I never received in school, and there needs to be some sort of platform where we can learn how being gay is not a sin, or learn how scientifically it's proven that being trans or non-binary is completely valid. And there needs to be this platform, and it just doesn't seem to exist in our school system. So I decided, let's create a channel just for a couple episodes to teach some coming out advice and help people. And then over the years, I kept on getting challenged by people around me, and so I decided to make more episodes from those challenges, and it ends up now where it's a big TV show.
And how many subscribers do you have to your channel on YouTube?
We officially have about 29,000 right now, give or take, a little bit. We're growing about 100 a day from YouTube right now in Pride Month, but it's gotten a whole lot bigger than I thought it would,
Yeah,
And
it really seems to have taken off very quickly. And what would you say of all the episodes you've taped thus far, and that's a lot to think about, what would you say was your favorite topic to cover?
I should have been prepared for this question. Truly, I think it's not the ones that have the most views, because of course not. I mean, like, the one that has the most views right now is a video that was all about the pride flags and what they all mean, and that was recorded like just off the cuff of like, hey, let me do something for fun. And of course that's the one that hits big. Not the ones that's like it takes hours to script out or something. But I think my favorite was probably talking about the pride events and stuff like that, and broadcasting a pride event in its entirety, because that for me was something where I wasn't able to go to pride events when I was younger in person, and I was in the closet. And so now it's sort of the entire broadcast that day, it felt to me like I was providing something finally, where I was helping the closeted kids like me. And this was a way that they can celebrate even though they're not able to go in person, and not to mention it was a day when I got to speak on a microphone at my old hometown, and really honor my uncle Jeffrey Blake, who my grandmother told me was gay, and I got to honor him in that moment to speak at a pride event, which was amazing.
So tell us a little bit about the pride event at which you got the opportunity to speak. Where was that, and when was
Sure.
that?
So that was Pottsville, PA Pride. It was the first ever Pride Festival. It was June of last year, so right in the middle of the pandemic, and basically 2 weeks prior to that, Michaela Gavelitz, who runs the entire program over there, she's an amazing woman, and amazing trans activist. She's been on my show on interviews before, and she contacts me and she's like, "Hey, Matt, so I know that you're an activist too, and I really like what you're doing. And do you mind like coming to this event and speaking at it?" And I'm like, "Okay, I don't mind. I would love that, you know." Because she's like, "We're putting this together, and we want you speaking at it." And then I'm like, "Hey, do you mind if I bring my cameras and broadcast it?" She's like, "Awesome. By the way, it's in 2 weeks from now." And I'm like, "What?" You know. And of course, during that time period, I'm going on vacation with my family. YouTube's sponsoring my channel to help it blow up, and I'm just like, well, a lot's happening right now, and I also have to write a speech now, you know. So thanks for that. But it was a very rewarding experience. And afterwards, we saw all the photos of a group called the Binder Boys, of all these trans kids getting together and just being so inspiring together and knowing that they're not alone in this county. It was wonderful to see.
So you're out in Schuylkill County, and I'm here in Crawford County, and both are, if you look at presidential politics, what you might refer to as deep red or dark red counties. Schuylkill went for Donald Trump in the last election, and I believe so did Crawford County.
Mhm.
So we're both blue dots, if you will, stuck in this massive sea of red, right? So have you received any slack or any pushback towards your efforts?
Well, I mean, when it comes to LGBTQ rights, we always look at it as a human issue, as an activist. There are certainly people out there who look at it as this democratic viewpoint where, you know, obviously if you're gay and an activist, you have to be a Democrat. Truly, I do consider myself an independent for my work all the time, because I am a videographer who makes commercials for political campaigns. I do switch parties back and forth all the time because of that work. And I just, when I get into the voting booth, I consider myself independent. I vote for who I think is the right person. I research my candidates highly. I'll grant you a majority of what I'm voting for is making sure that you're LGBTQ friendly, but and I certainly cover that on my show of who is going to be LGBTQ friendly. Um, I feel in this county where it's a lot of red people, and there's certainly some blue people with very strong opinions. And I sort of see benefits and cost of both sides there. Um, and that's part of my time as being a reporter and a news anchor, is like, just, I have to look at both sides and know the good and the bad. But I felt a lot of disdain from a lot of people over the years. We've gotten bomb threats, we've gotten death threats, we've been doxxed before. Our computer systems have been hacked here. Like, in a way, it impresses me how much and how far people are willing to go to in order to you know, kind of push down LGBTQ education. We've certainly got our fair share of commenters that we've banned over the years, and it's depressing to know how many people hate us just for being who we are and loving who we love. But when you're an educator, it feels like that is taken to a whole new level of like, let's send you a bomb, let's trying to burn up your building. Like, we've had people that were arrested before for these things. It's like, it's frightening for my family and I, because I never thought I would be getting any death threats at all, let alone, you know, putting my family's lives in danger, you know.
That's actually quite a risk that you're taking then for the sake of educating all those kids that are out there, all the youths that are just now becoming aware of who they are, what their sexual orientation is, what their gender identity is. They're just beginning to explore what that means to them. So for those particular young people, despite all of the bomb threats and the attacks on you personally or on your show, what advice would you give to somebody who's still in the closet and looking for a way to come out? What's your best advice?
I think the first and foremost thing is know that you're not alone out there. There are, you know, 10% of the whole world is LGBTQ.
Do you find it, let me rephrase, how do you feel when a young person approaches you at, say, Pottsville Pride or some other LGBTQ themed event and thanks you for the work you're doing? How does that make you feel?
Well, it's kind of surreal because for the first little bit of the show, I even made an episode on my channel. I said, I don't want this channel for the money or the fame or the like whatever comes from it, because at the time we weren't big enough to make monetization on YouTube at all, and so it wasn't for the money, and it still isn't. I always say nowadays, like every bit of merchandise we sell goes to helping make the channel bigger and better. And I haven't gotten recognized in public too much yet, but it was kind of surreal because in November, I think it was, we were filming a musical for a school, and in the musical world, there's an overwhelming majority of people that are LGBTQ. And I'm sort of lucky to work in that little space in my company where I get to interact with so many other kids that were like me as a kid. And we were working this event, and all of a sudden a group of kids comes over to me and they're like, by the way, I watched your TV show. And I'm just like, okay, which one? Because like I have 5 on YouTube, and they're like, no, Power Rainbow is like, we're all LGBTQ, but like every one of us on the cast today is LGBTQ, and we all watch your show. And I'm just like, it's for this Catholic school, and I'm like, you would never get this education in your school program because of the way that school works. And they're just like thanking me up and down, and I bawled my eyes out in tears, and I'm just like, thank you so much. And I like, because of COVID regulations, I couldn't give them all a hug, but I'm like, I really want to right now. And then I called all my friends after that shoot was over, and I'm just like, guess what happened? And they're like, what? And I'm like, did the shoot go well? And I'm like, oh my God, I just cried my eyes out. And they're like, it's a surreal moment to meet someone in person that you've helped affect in that way, I think.
I agree. So I can see your shirt that you're wearing today is bright and colorful, and it says Professor Pride. Where did the name come from?
From my students, honestly. So years ago on the show, I was just going by, welcome to Powered and Protected by Rainbows. I'm your host, Matt Haslam. And then as the show was kind of getting more popularity in a matter of like a week there, we gained like 10,000 subscribers and last June. And all of a sudden, one of my students goes, well, really, you've taught me more than any of my actual professors in college did. So you might as well be Professor Pride at this point. And that just took off with hundreds of replies from other kids, and I just realized, like, that's my name now, like, that's really cool, and then certain Pride events started picking it up and saying, like, Professor Pride's going to be here, and this year when we go on tour, we're actually calling it the Professor Pride Tour. So it's kind of like just taking its own life now. I'm not a literal professor of a college, but we kind of created our own classroom online because, as you know as well as I do, I mean, Pennsylvania has laws that say you can't distribute propaganda to school districts. And it's like, well, I mean, our show is in hundreds of GSA clubs around the state. So technically that's exactly what we're doing, but we're covered under free speech and freedom of the press because it's an online TV show that people can choose to watch or not to watch. So
Exactly. And we believe that's the same for not only Pep Talks Uncut, but for our other daily show, which is What's Gay in PA. And as of yesterday, recorded and posted our 10th show.
that
So
was awesome. I saw that.
thank you. And we've covered some pretty hard topics on there. So on Friday's show, you mentioned we talked about the situation with nursing homes and certified nurse aides. And I think that was, for me, an incredible episode because for me, it was personal because my father is currently living in a nursing home in Ohio for people with dementia. And last year, a little more than a year ago, he was diagnosed with COVID. And his team had to work him back from really difficult time breathing and getting around. And
Like a month and a half later, and when it's actually posted of like, no, this is actually going out into the world and it's helping people. I think the first comment on every video really is that moment of relief for me of like, no, this is actually helping, and before that moment, it's 3-4 months of just, what if it doesn't do well? What if this doesn't help? What if the information I provide isn't well, not that it's always accurate because we have script writers that help make sure it's accurate, but what if it's not adequate, and what if we didn't cover that topic enough? What if there was one bit of information that we should have thrown in there, so that relief comes when it comes out and we're like, okay, it actually is like here.
okay, so you're a man who wears many hats. You have Powered by Rainbows, you have Matt Haslam Productions, you do quite a bit of videography and video editing for various private concerns. Among them, you've mentioned doing things like football games.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but you also wear the hat of Vice President for Eastern PA for the Pennsylvania Equality Project. Now, within that role, what do you see as Pennsylvania's greatest challenge to the LGBTQ plus community?
Well, on top of that, I just want to quickly note that I'm one of the admins of the Schuylkill County LGBTQ Club. So if you're from Schuylkill County or around there, please join our club online. It's private and you get to interact with locals around the area, not just in general in PA, but so even more hats than that. But as if that wasn't enough of being a gay boy. But I'm totally sorry, and I'm blanking here. The original question was.
So what is, and by the way, no problem with the plug. That was perfectly well timed. But the question is, what do you see in your role as vice president to be Pennsylvania's greatest challenge to the LGBTQ plus community?
Education. I mean, our lawmakers are. I mean, I'm not speaking as any Professor Pride or whatever. Like, just education. I mean, we see our lawmakers come up with these laws that are like, you can't teach this in school, and it's like there's separation of church and state for a reason. We teach about straight relationship, like every problem we have in the community and outside the community, whether it be, our elderly care for LGBTQ adults, which is a massive problem that we do have to deal with, or if it's homophobia, transphobia, biphobia, and aphobia in the adult life, whether it's the gay hookup culture in our own community. We have our own problems of biphobia, discriminating on bisexual people as gay people, which is a weird concept to me of like, you should be the most understanding people of all, and yet we're discriminating against bisexual people, not me specifically, but the gay community. And we have the problem with the gay hookup culture where we relate because of education. We're not taught how our relationships will work one day. And so we entertain ourselves and we find that relationship in adult films online as teenagers. And that causes us to relate love to sex in this very weird way, where later in life we go, all we need is hookups in order to be happy. And I'm not saying that culture is completely wrong. I'm just saying it teaches us a certain way when we're younger, And so even in the younger years, we have schools such as Boyertown, PA, where you have kids protesting a gay pride event, and you have other kids in PA at another school that I forget the name of. Maybe you can jog my memory here, but they had a protest outside where they said fag lives don't matter, and so we see these things all the time, and yet all of them could be solved by proper education and in our youth, where basically you get taught correctly that being LGBTQ is perfectly valid in science class and literature class and history class, and all of a sudden later in life you don't become a bigot, you don't become this homophobic and transphobic person who's hating and murdering LGBTQ people later in life.
So to that end, you mentioned education, and I think most of our audience combined knows that I am a retired high school teacher. And teaching is something I did for well over 17 years. One of the concerns I have is administration within school districts or the school board members raising a fuss over the existence of LGBTQ people within the confines of school buildings. And what's coming to mind for me right now is the matter of the Pencrest School District and David Valesky, who is one of their school board members, who on his Facebook page posted some rather, I guess the best word for it is uninformed or uneducated positions towards the LGBTQ community, and insisted that it's not the library's place to put on display books with LGBTQ themes, even though it's Pride Month, and Pride Month always lands in the very last few days of school during COVID, when there aren't very many kids in the building in the first place. So my question is this: when school board members, or for that matter, anyone in the public eye, posts anti-LGBTQ material or opinions on their own personal social media,
and to diminish the viewpoints of others, like this happens in every instance we talk about. For instance, the Me Too movement, which I think we can all agree, no one should be sexually harassed at work, no one should be sexually assaulted, in general. And yet it's this culture of blaming the victims until they can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that it happened. And even when that happens, such as the case with Brett Kavanaugh, where it's proven, we go into this system where it's still blaming the victims for speaking up so later in life. And so this happens all the time with the cancel culture and getting accused of, oh, you're just trying to get rid of that person. It's no, they did a bad thing and they shouldn't be in that position, especially with school districts where, I'm sorry, but you're taking taxpayer money. You're getting paid by us, and you are our employee. And that means that we should have a say over the rules that you have to follow, because it's up to the employer to say, here are the requirements for the job. If you don't meet them, goodbye. And so I don't think that situation can apply to everything where, the cancel culture is just trying to get rid of this one person. It's a system where, hey, I don't appreciate the fact that you're discriminating against any student, because you have to realize for a school, I mean, even if you only have 1,000 students in your school, which is a pretty small school, right? That means there's 100 kids that you're openly discriminating against. There's 100 kids that you're saying, no, you don't exist and you don't matter to me. And
So
to me, that's a problem.
in my opinion, that in a sense is just as canceling as what they would claim,
Exactly.
right? You're
I think
canceling their existence.
I think that's more damaging, because you can say all you want. This one, look, I mean, what we're saying is this one person shouldn't hold this job and get paid for it. They can still go on living and having those homophobic and transphobic thoughts in their mind. Just don't say them out loud. But I mean, no one's saying you can't live your life and have your own opinions. But what you're trying to say as a school board member is, hey, these 100 kids in my school don't exist. And that causes them, and we've proven on our shows, on PA equality shows, on all of our programs, look, the data on this is pretty clear. When you try to cancel someone's life when they're young, that causes 42% of them to try to commit suicide every year. And to me, I don't care what position you're in life. I don't care what job you have, if it's in the private sector or public sector. If you end up pushing a kid to suicide, you should be in jail for the rest of your life. Like that's it. That's manslaughter in my eyes, and it's been in court before where this is manslaughter. Same with conversion therapy. It's like, if you push a kid to suicide, a simple "I'm sorry" is not going to do it. That's not going to make up for it. So I say that one school board member that you're talking about, there's no doubt in my mind he shouldn't have that position, and he shouldn't be in a position where he has any authority over children, because it's going to end up with a kid committing suicide. And we're going to have another situation like Channing Smith, where he was outed by the students and then he ended up committing suicide. And the school board said, well, we had no idea this was happening. We had no idea. Like, you fully knew that bullying was happening and you did nothing about it. You chose this. And so it's incredibly damaging to youth.
So, as you are aware, Pennsylvania Equality Project has done a number of surveys over the past several years, and among them was a survey regarding discrimination. It turns out 57% of people believe they face some measure of discrimination generally. Do you find that number to be staggeringly high?
No, I find that number to be staggeringly low. With a lot of surveys, we end up using a lot of research done by PA Equality Project because it's a statewide network where our show is located. But sadly, a lot of people aren't willing to speak up about discrimination. That our school system teaches them that they're not normal, and that if you speak up about being gay or trans or non-binary or bisexual or pansexual, so on, that you're not normal in society's eyes. And so I feel like with a lot of surveys that are done, even on the national or worldwide level, there's a lot of people that aren't going to speak up about certain things. And so that number surprises me, but it's surprising that it's that low. I mean, I cannot think of one LGBTQ person on my entire contact list. And keep in mind, I'm an activist that has hundreds of these contacts. Like, I cannot think of one person that wasn't discriminated against, and it's just a matter of speaking up about it because we need that. So when we start talking about all these statistics of, was it 80% of bisexual youth are discriminated in schools, all of them. It's low for me, and I'm surprised by that.
And we're just about out of time. We'd love to have you come back on the show
Yeah.
in, let's say, 6 months to a year. Last week's guest, Matt Manglona, his show has just premiered on YouTube. He's a married gay man living in Pennsylvania, and his interview was astounding. It was really enjoyable to talk with him. So I conclude with any sort of marriage plans in your future.
Geez.
Sorry
Well,
to
we're
put you on the
talking.
spot.
Someone wants to be the minister of my. No. So I've said on my show that I want to someday, not so much settle down because I'm not that rowdy of a person right now, but my dream is to have a house, a dog, and a husband. So I definitely want to marry a man of my dreams someday. Like back when I was 11 years old, I started dreaming of this, and for all those years, I thought it was wrong to dream this way and daydream before I fell asleep at night of like, yeah, this is what I want in life, and it took me years to figure out that that's not a wrong feeling. That's not a wrong daydream to have. I'm still single as of the date of this recording. So, I mean, obviously having access to, 29,000 people on my show and 30,000 people with the PA Equality Project. I mean, it's not bringing me a date right now. But which is kind of weird because some people thought that, oh, you're just trying to get a boyfriend. And I'm like, I'm not going to lie. If it brings me a boyfriend, but I want to get married. And I think, I mean, even when back in, I think it was 2014, when Pennsylvania passed marriage equality, I heard about that news and I was crying my eyes out of happiness. And the day marriage equality became the law of the land in the United States in 2015, sorry, dates in my head. There's too much gay stuff up here. So the date that happened, I literally ran down my stairs in my house, and I'm just like so happy, and I'm crying my eyes out. And then I get halfway down the stairs and realize no one knows I'm gay yet. So if I act so happy about this event, I definitely have those plans someday.
Someday.
Not like tomorrow. If I meet a man tomorrow, I'm not going to marry him like a day. But
well, Matt, thank you for joining us. Matt Haslam of Matt Haslam Productions. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. We are Pep Talks Uncut. Join us next week when our special guest will be Representative Mike Schlossberg from Allentown, and we'll be talking with him about all kinds of things going on in Harrisburg. And we want to check in with him and see what direction he thinks equality, fairness, and freedom are going in Pennsylvania under a GOP legislature. So be sure to tune in for that. Thank you for enjoying our show today, and we look forward to talking again and seeing everybody next week. Thanks much.
Thank you. I can't wait for that other episode.